Are you tired of life circumstances having more control over you than you have over you? Are you tired of the circumstances of life, like being overwhelmed, frustration, doubt, insecurity, lack of peace, anxiousness, hopelessness, feeling lost? Are you tired of those feelings frustrating you? Well, maybe those frustrations are indications that God is calling you to go higher. So in this video, I want to talk to you about going higher. So stay tuned. When I say going higher or go higher, I'm talking about going above your current situation or circumstance in life, going above your current mind state, getting above your current situation in life, getting above your current mindset, getting above your current feelings, thoughts, and emotions. I think it's important to understand that and recognize that certain frustrations are indication that it's time for you to go higher. And so what do I mean? God doesn't or didn't want us or didn't intend for us to live a life below his best for us. And I think that's important to understand because because we're on the earth, it is easy for us to start to take on the personality and the habits of the earth. And understanding that just because we're on the earth, it does not mean we do the same as the earth does. And I think it's important for us to understand that we are not intended to handle things culture's way, especially when you are a child of God, especially when you are in, when you're in a personal relationship with God. God does not intend for us to live on the level that's less than his best for us. Now, he will let us live there if that's what we want to do, but that's not his intention for us. And so his intention for us is he intended for us to live a life of higher, a life that allows us to rise above culture's standards and preferences and to pursue kingdom standards and preferences. And so what I mean by that is there are going to be standards and preferences that culture has. There are going to be certain things that are okay with culture to do. It's going to be natural for culture to do them. An example of that is if somebody disrespects you, it's okay to lash out at them. If somebody says something you don't like, it's okay to, if you feel disrespected, it's okay to get angry and allow your anger to cause you to get in a fight or to cause you to retaliate. While that is okay for culture, in the kingdom is completely different. If somebody disrespects you in the kingdom, if somebody says something to you that you don't like, Ephesians 4:26 says, be angry, but sin not. Do not allow your anger, do not allow your feelings and emotions to cause you to do something outside of the kingdom standards and preferences. I think that's important to understand is because we as people, we are in the world and we also want to be in the kingdom. And so we're playing double dutch. James 1:8 says a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. And so understanding that when you're going back and forth on which kingdom, which standards and which preferences you should follow, it's going to cause you to be double-minded majority of the time. That allows room for you to be unclear. It allows room for you to be confused. It allows room for there to be chaos and no clarity. And I think that's important to understand that 1 Corinthians 14:33 says God is not the author of confusion. So if you're in a situation currently, if you've been battling the spirit of confusion, if you've been battling confusion your entire life, understanding that maybe you are being double-minded or you're constantly on the fence about some things. And so understanding that God does not intend for us to live by culture standards and preferences, but he intends for us to live by kingdom standards and preferences. That's why he left us the Bible. And so what do I mean by kingdom standards and preferences? Cultural standards and preferences. Culture says to pursue to get. That means pursue whatever it is to get whatever it is. That means you hear people say, I'm chasing the money, or chase the bag, or I'm chasing my dreams, or whatever it is. If you genuinely break that down and you think about it, when you chase stuff, most of the time the stuff that you're chasing is running from you. And so when you're pursuing something and when you're going after something, depending on your heart posture and depending on the way that you do it, it's going to continue to run from you. And so understanding that when it comes to culture's way, when it comes to culture's standards and preferences, most of the time culture lives with fear. Most of the time culture lives with doubt. Most of the time culture lives with a lack of peace. In Hebrews 4, there's something called the believer's rest. When you're living culture's way, that rest that God has set for the believer is not, you do not have access to it. You don't obtain it because you're constantly pursuing something to get something. Maybe you're pursuing a better job to get more money. Maybe you're pursuing a nicer looking house or a bigger house to be able to get more peace, or to be able to get recognition, or to whatever the situation, the circumstance is. But when you are pursuing kingdom's standards and preferences, kingdom says become and attract. Become and attract. And so become is more of understanding that everything that is for you, everything that God has for you, you have to become this set of core values, this set of morals, these values, these ethics, in order to attract the things that you're believing God for. And so that in return also gives you peace, and it also gives you a work ethic. It also gives you a mindset. It also gives you security. It also gives you faith, and it also gives you resilience and persistence to be able to continue to go towards the thing that you're asking God for. And the thing about it, when it comes to kingdom standards and preferences, if there's a particular thing that you do not have currently, you can't blame anyone else but yourself, because when you're walking with God, God will not give you something that you do not have the capacity to handle. And so when it says become and attract, now you have to flip your mind and say, okay, if I don't have a particular thing that I know God gave me a word for, maybe I have not became my full, or maybe I have not become the full version of whatever it is to handle that particular thing that I'm believing God for and what God said he was going to give me. And so you have to ask yourself, if you have not attracted the particular thing that you're believing God for, if you have not attracted peace, if you have not attracted well-being, if you have not attracted faith, and if you have not attracted lack of anxiety, if you have not attracted things that are kingdom standards and preferences, you have to ask yourself, have I became those particular things that I'm desiring? And I think it's important to know that, because most of the time we are looking to blame someone or something for the reason that we don't have something. Not understanding that when you do it the kingdom's way, the kingdom, God will not give you something that you are not ready for. That's like giving your child, or giving a child the keys to a Mercedes-Benz and saying, hey, go have fun, just because they asked for them. That's not smart. And God, because he loves us, he will not give us anything that's going to harm us. He will actually withhold it from us until we get to a place we can handle it. And if we never get to that place, then he'll never give it to us. And so I think that's important to understand when it comes to culture versus kingdom. And so also understanding that when you go higher, you have to rise above where you are, so the turbulence of life doesn't cause you to be unstable. You heard me say previously in this podcast that James 1:8 says a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. And so if you've ever played Jenga, you also understand how do you play. You have to tap out the blocks and be able to get them out without making the whole tower fall. And so there comes a point where the tower is just unstable to the point where now the whole thing comes tumbling down. And that is similar to how being double-minded is to the point where you're constantly back and forth, you're constantly rocking, you're constantly trying to figure out what to do, what not to do, you're constantly knowing who to follow, who not to follow, you're constantly trying to figure out where to go and what to do, that eventually when the turbulence of life comes, it just knocks you off your course, what makes it harder for you to get up. And so sometimes you have to understand that you have to make decisions in your time of strength for your times of weakness, because it's not if you get weak, it's when you get weak. We're all human. We're all flawed people. We all are corrupt. We all have particular things about us that are completely different, but that are the same. And so we have to understand that we have to go higher. We have to do things so that the turbulence of life don't continue to cause us to be unstable when it comes to walking this life out, to continue to cause us to be anxious, to continue to cause us to be overwhelmed, to continue to cause us to be have anxiety and fear and doubt and lust and pride and envy. Those things are very important. When we are unstable and we are not above the turbulence of life, we are anxious, fearful, lazy, doubtful, undisciplined, double-minded. These are all traits we experience when we don't decide to go higher. And I think it's important to note that particular point, because most of the time we will equate those characteristic traits to something happening to us in life. While that may be the case for certain ones, sometimes it's not just about what's happening to us. Sometimes it's about what's happening in us. And I think a lot of times, because of us not being able to rise above the turbulence of life, because maybe we're lazy, maybe we aren't aware of the season that we're in. Maybe we aren't conscious that life has shifted, but you haven't shifted. I think it's important to understand that most of the time, your internal battles are more impactful on your perception of particular things than external battles. And so understanding that how you view and those characteristic traits that are in that point, I think being able to be aware that when it's time for you to go higher, I think it's important to internally do some introspection, have some self-awareness about what's happening on the inside of you that's causing you to continue to display those characteristic traits, those habits, those patterns, getting to the root of the issue that's producing the fruit of the issue, getting to the symptom of the sickness that's producing the sickness. And I think that's very important, because most of the time we will equate the turbulence of life to what someone does to us. I think that's important. So understanding this, when you go higher, higher is not just an altitude, it's an attitude. Higher is not just a place, it's a perspective. And so understanding that when you go higher, you also have to go to a different level. But that different level also means you have to have a different attitude with going to that new level. The reason that I say that is because when you go to a different level of your life, you have to remember that you're the beginner on that level. You are a beginner on that level. And so if you look at the numerical system, all the numbers start over again. From 1 to 100, whatever, they always have to start over. So if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, when you get to 10, you have to start back over at 1. So that means 11, 12, 13, 14, and so on. And then when you get to 2, you got to go to 21. So regardless of what level you're on, you're going to always be a beginner on that level. So you have to have an attitude of humility. You have to have an attitude of pridelessness. You have to have an attitude of being coachable and teachable. You have to lower your ego. And so understanding that higher is not just the altitude, it's an attitude. Higher is not just a place, it's a perspective. And so understanding that when you go higher, you will be in a different place of your life. When you go higher, you will be in a different place of your life, which means now you should have a different perspective. If you go to a different place of your life and don't decide to open yourself up to a new perspective, what tends to happen is that you're in a different place, but your old perspective is continually bringing you down. And so you're continually, constantly in a fight trying to figure out what to do, who to listen to, which goes back to James 1:8, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. So you have to understand that when you go to a higher place, you also have to go to a higher perspective. You have to be open enough to receiving a higher perspective. I think a lot of times we don't realize that when we go to a different level of our life, that different level of our life should also require us to now broaden our horizons to be able to intake more information, because you don't want to just stay on that level. You want to sustain on that level and be successful on that level until it's time for you to go to the next level. And in order to be able to be successful on that particular level, you have to have a different perspective. Your old perspective will not be able to keep you at that level, because it's not what got you there. That's the thing. It's what got you there, but it's not what's going to keep you there. And so I think it's important to understand that when you go higher is not just a place, it's a perspective. You have to take your perspective higher as well. And so when you're not able to have a higher attitude, and when you're able to not have a higher perspective, we have to understand that comes with living a life that's less than God's best for us. That's what comes with laziness and doubt and fear and anxiety. And that's what comes with not feeling capable and confident and competent. I think it's important. So this here, it says, when we don't go higher, we are settling for a suboptimal life, a life that's less than God's best for us. And so I think it's important to understand that a suboptimal life is saying that how you are currently, the life that you're living currently, the level that you're on currently is better than what God has for you because of the work that is required of you. And so understanding that when you decide to settle for a life that's less than God's best for you, what you're actually saying is that, God, I'm okay living on this level because either I don't want to do the work, I don't want to let go of my way, my pride is in the way, whatever it may be, you are deciding to live on that level. Or maybe you have not been exposed to or exposed in a way to understand there is better. And so I think it's important to identify internally with yourself the reason that you're deciding to stay on the level that you're on. You're deciding to continue to allow doubt, fear, anxiety, laziness, disbelief, unbelief, whatever it may be, you're continually allowing that to keep you on a level that's less than God's best for you. The reason that you're not willing to rise above what's going on, the turbulence of life, the reason that you're not willing to allow life to allow going higher to be your new standard in every situation and circumstance. And so I think it's important to understand here, a life where turbulence, when you don't decide to go higher, you will experience a life where turbulence will continue to make you unstable. And so I think it's important to recognize that your life, and be aware that your life may be unstable, or you may continually experience certain turbulences of life because you aren't deciding to go higher. And I think it's important, the reason that you're continually frustrated with your husband or wife, or in that business, or with your money, or with your health, is because you want to obtain a new level without doing new things. You want to go to a different level. You want to obtain more without having to do more. And I think it's important to understand that in order for you to rise up, and in order for you to get up, you have to go up. You have to go to a different level. You have to go higher. And so when you don't go higher, we continue to experience doubt, fear, instability, loneliness, frustration, anger, and lack of peace. These are all the things that God never intended for us to settle for, but He will let us settle for them if we decide to. And I think it's important that we are aware of that, because if we don't understand that we are the reasons for not being better or getting better in certain situations, we will continue to blame God for certain things. Proverbs 19:3 says there are many people who ruin their lives and blame it all on God. I think it's important to understand that God is not responsible for everything sometimes, and we are flawed and corrupt people. And so if we continue to blame God for stuff, we will not be able to take responsibility for the reason we're not able to grow and develop, for the reason we're not able to get ahead in life. And I think it's important to understand that. And so I'll give you a verse to wrap up all of that. And it's Isaiah 55:8-9. It says, "For your thoughts are not my thoughts, and for your ways are not my ways. For as high as the heavens are above the earth, so are my thoughts and my ways above yours." And so I hope this helps you be able to obtain a higher perspective, and to motivate you and inspire you to want to go higher. And I thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.